right? But that's what I broke this down to. I said, okay, I still believe that in the end, winning a Super Bowl is it's not required to have these things, but it's just as important as having a great quarterback. Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Friday, January the 27th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network, and I am joined, as always, by producer JT. JT, how are you? How was your week?
I'm good. Happy Friday. We made it through another work week once again, and excited for this AFC and NFC championship slate we have this weekend.
Yeah, championship weekend right around the corner, and we're going to talk about that, as well as quite a bit of Titans news, a lot of tidbits here and there this week in terms of things worth talking about today. So it's going to be a little bit of a different episode, a little bit of a scatterbrained episode, but all some really important topics nonetheless, and things that I'm excited to chat a little bit about. Maybe not our typical length today. I don't know. We'll see. You know the length of the episode because you're listening to it, and you can watch the ticker on your phone screen right now. But I'm guessing here at the top we'll go probably 30, 45 minutes because, JT, I have some good news and some bad news. I'll start with the bad news, I suppose. The bad news is I'm pretty sure for the time being that James Foster Fridays are dead. They're dead. They're gone. They're not happening anymore. But the good news is they are dead because for the next couple of months, next couple of weeks until the draft, and then probably a couple of weeks after the draft, we are, and this is not in stone quite yet, but this is what we're planning on doing. We're going to have standalone episodes of James Foster joining us as a co-host to talk about all things draft going into this big offseason that we have ahead of us. And that's super exciting. I'm super jacked about it. So it's really not bad news. James Foster Fridays were great during the season when he stopped by for 15 or 20 minutes to chat ball during the football season. But now that it's over and we're looking at prospects and we're talking about the draft and doing all of these exciting things that are directly in the middle of his wheelhouse. We got a taste of that last week. If you tuned into the show that posted on Thursday morning, right? Thursday morning, we got that up, and it was James Foster and I and JT going through his mock draft 1.0, which was fantastic. And it was an hour long, and we recorded it intending to make it a James Foster Friday segment. Of course, crazy long, couldn't have done that. So we made it a standalone episode. And as I thought about the next couple of weeks as we head into the draft, I thought, why not just make this a regular thing? We didn't get it up Wednesday because of some technical issues, but that's going to be the plan, I believe. We'll have our regular shows on Monday and Friday mornings, and then on Wednesday mornings, you'll have a midweek taste of draft talk. We'll be talking draft all week, most of the weeks for the next couple of months. But on Wednesdays, we'll have James with us for hopefully an extended period of time. And we'll be going through all kinds of different draft topics. If you listen to this show at all last draft season, you know that James and I, as co-hosts, did all kinds of really interesting deep dive discussions into a lot of these prospects. And if you listen to the show all the way through January, February, March, and April last year, then you were super well prepared for the draft. It's going to be even more so this year. If you listen all the way through the draft, you're going to get the very best information specific to the Tennessee Titans in particular that I think you can get anywhere. I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now, JT. I think this is going to be the best and most insightful resource, bit of content that that exists in the Nashville media market for the Tennessee Titans draft. And I'm super excited as we continue to plan that. So no James today. We had him yesterday. And if you're listening to the show now and you didn't listen to James on Thursday morning, then finish this episode. And then when you're looking for more to listen to, go back, listen to that episode. It's great. You get a perfect primer on 31 of the best, maybe not the 31 best, but 31 of the best players in this draft. He goes through his entire first round, and we talk about each one, get a little bit of a primer, a little bit of a summary on each of these guys that is going to be really valuable as we start to dive into the draft season. So that's the plan for that. And today we're going to be doing a little topic up front here with the warm up. Shout out to Jacob Sane on Twitter. We're gonna go officially go with that name for the top of the show segment here. The warm up. It's perfect. The Hot Read podcast. This is the warm up. It's the first topic. It's my one big thing. I think it's a perfect name for our segment here. So that's what we're going to get into here in just a moment. And then Titans news with producer JT as always. And then best segment of the entire week, every week. It's the best bet gauntlet. Our playoff pick six rolls on into the championship round. We are 9-4 in the playoffs, and we have a fantastic winning record on the year that I went back and kind of tabulated this past week. We're going to go over all of that in that segment at the end of the show. Before we get into the warm-up today, two things. First of all, random anecdote, but I have to share because it's frustrated me today. JT, you know when you buy something at the store and it comes with the cheap garbage factory batteries, batteries included, but they don't last, and there's some no-name Chinese brand, and then they die and you have to replace them with real ones?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what happened with what I bought the other day. I bought it's a little thermometer thing so that I can know the temperature outside, right? Just a random gadget for the house. And it came with those batteries, and so it's like, great, cool. Set it up, got it working. It worked for about a week, and then the batteries croaked today. And I was like, man, the factory batteries must have just been horrible. They must be the worst factory batteries ever. I opened the back of it, and they had put quadruple A batteries in the slots for AAA batteries. It's made for AAA batteries, and I didn't even know that quadruple A batteries were a thing necessarily.
I was about to say I had never heard of a quadruple A battery.
Yeah, same form factor. They're just much smaller, and they I guess we're powerful enough to power it. But I mean, how far have we gone with the cost cutting efforts to from the factory send things with the wrong size battery just to save a buck? I found that funny. I also, interestingly enough, today have kind of focused all day long on the random fun topic of the day on Twitter, and recording this, of course, on Thursday. But if you were on Twitter at all in the past 24 to 48 hours, I can almost guarantee you that you've come across the pen discussion. It's been what I've seen all day today, and I've been thinking about all day, frankly, because I love this kind of nonsensical, completely unimportant debate. But we have here a picture, JT, if you can pull it up, of the tweet that started this discussion on Twitter from a guy named Chris Gross or Grossi. I'm not sure. I don't know who this guy is, but he blew up for this picture that he took, it looks like, with pens that he found around the house on his living room carpet, and then used Snapchat to put numbers on there. But hey, it works because he's got 8.1 million views on this picture. But he's just asking, if you can only write with one of these pens for the rest of your life, which one are you picking? Now, I'll pause here, JT, to point out that if you haven't seen this tweet and or you're just listening via the podcast, then you're missing out. You don't know what the heck we're about to talk about. You got to go over to YouTube, where you can find the Broadway Sports Media YouTube page. Just search Broadway Sports Media or the Hot Read podcast or 440 Sports. You will find the Broadway Sports Media YouTube page, and you will find every video version of the Hot Read podcast there for you to enjoy, both audio-wise and video-wise. Your eyes and ears can both indulge in the show, and we do a lot of hard work making the graphics and everything look good for the show. So we appreciate you subscribing over there as well as on the podcast feed. And for days like today, where we've got 4 or 5 different things lined up to show you as well as to talk about with you, that's important. You got to be able to watch. So go over there if you want to get on the pen discussion as we talk about it. But JT, before I give my diatribe on this, have you seen this tweet?
I have, mostly through you today on Twitter.
Okay,
and
your
your responses to many people, but I saw it mainly through you, but I did see it.
Do you have an opinion on pens? Do you have an opinion on this chart? What pen are you going with for the rest of your life if you have to choose one?
I mean, I'm gonna to me, it's not this big, heavy, hard-hitting issue. Like, use the pen that you want, man. It's not.
I'm not really
gonna. And that's right, because you were on Twitter all day today, just
really
trying to get every single.
Can you tell how busy I was today talking about pens all day?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways,
I personally am gonna be a square here and go with the G2, the classic.
That's fine.
I think the
Good
G2.
pen.
I think it's a great pen. I think it's
Great
the Ferrari of pens, especially well, if you consider that, back in my younger years in 5th grade, when someone whipped out a G2 pen, you knew oh, they came to play today.
Sure.
and they kind of just like stuck with me. So I'm gonna take the G2.
Okay, yeah, maybe it used to be the first. That's where that analogy is where you lost me. If I had to do a car analogy for the G2, I would call it like I'd call it the Mustang of pens, right? And
That's
here's
fair.
why. I think it used to be a bigger deal than it is. It is still considered a sports car. It's still a luxury pen in my book. It's a very nice pen. It's an above average pen for sure. And it is something that is reliable. Like, you love the features. It's got all the sexy curves and bells and whistles that you want in a luxury vehicle, but it's not the top of the top. But also, maybe like the risk involved is very low. Very, very low risk, very high reward on the G2. Like, it's going to, I've never had a G2 that has stopped writing. It's going to have a big, nice, thick line every time. It's got the clicker. Can't go wrong. Can't forget to put the cap on there and let it dry out. Can't lose the cap. That's a plus for sure. Got the gel grip. Love that. Like, it's a very safe pen. I don't think it can really explode in your pocket. Nice build quality. Here's the argument for the pen of choice for me. I'm a Uniball guy. Okay, I've got right here. Well, actually, this is an off-brand, but it's the same. It's the same tech. Like, you have the roller balls, you have the gel. Right, there's all types of different ink delivery systems on these pens. Right, the Uniball, they have the little ball on the end of the metal tip, and I love that because it allows for I think, smoothest writing experience. It allows for a nice thick line, and I just love the way that it feels in my hand. It's very basic. I don't love pens that get really fat, and like, the gel grips are fine sometimes for me, but I kind of just prefer a standard pen. But really, what's important to me in a pen is the quality of the writing that's going to do and the reliability of the line. Like, is it gonna, am I gonna be writing quickly, and then in the middle of my upstroke, is it going to stop working all of a sudden? Can't stand that when you have to like double over because it missed a part or it was super faint. Can't have it. It's unacceptable, my pen use. Okay, so I love Uniball. So 1 or 4 were my choices. Also love 2. 4 is my favorite of choice. Kind of an unpopular opinion. If I had to pick a Ferrari of pens, that's the Ferrari of pens for me. Very high build quality. It's got the interchangeable ink cartridges, so you can keep that same one if you're responsible with your pens and want to use it all the way up and then replace it. Really nice cap that I like. I like to take a cap off a pen and put it on the back. I enjoy that. I appreciate what clickers offer. I do. I also, JT, heard a very compelling argument from a number of people on Twitter for number 3. Okay, the Sharpie pen, clicker pen. Apparently, this is the one that I'm willing to hear the argument on, because this is the one pen in this lineup that I've not had extensive experience with. So maybe it's great. I hear they've upped their game. I hear it's a very nice pen. Got the clicker, got the gel grip, everything. So we need to do some R&D on that. Okay, we'll go and search out a Sharpie pen. I'm willing to hear that. But really, the reason I even bring this up on the show, because of course this is a poignant football topic. On this graphic, I am perfectly fine with you saying that your pen of choice is 1 through 6. 1 through 6, I'm willing to hear the argument on. I think they're all very nice pens. 6 is a little bit questionable because although it's very thick, you got the felt tip, really nice bright colors, a lot of color options. They tend to bleed, and that they don't work for me. If you're if you're artsy, or maybe you're a one side of the paper kind of person, then sure. But if your answer is number 7, what are we doing? What are we doing with number 7? If you're using a number 7 pen, and for those of you that are too lazy to go over to YouTube to find out what I'm talking about, I'll describe it to you. You ever been to a doctor's office, and you go up to the front desk to check in, and they give you the paperwork, and they say, just fill this out for us, and you go to grab a pen, and they got 2 buckets. They got the clean pen bucket and the dirty pen bucket that they labeled for COVID or whatever. That's the pen sitting in there. The pen that you gotta take the cheap plastic cap off. It doesn't actually stick to the back, so you just gotta kind of hold on to it. Okay, it's got the kind of plastic build that if you shatter it, it does shatter. Like, it doesn't bend at all. So if any flex at all, it's gonna blow up into a million pieces. And you have to use the Midas Zeus to get it to roll across the freaking page. It's the worst, cheapest pen on the face of the planet. I saw some insane people on the internet saying that 7 is their pen of choice, that it's the OG. No, you deserve better than one of these 7 pens in your life. Okay, these are the pens that inmates in federal prison should be forced to use, and that's it. Okay? If I can find the pen that you use on a doctor's office front desk or on a bank teller's desk that I have to use to fill out paperwork, and it goes in a dirty pen box after I use it, I don't want your poverty pen in my life. Okay? Don't give me that nonsense. And if you can afford, I don't know, food and shelter and a roof over your head and a bed to sleep on at night, then you can afford to not get a 7. So do better by yourself by getting any pen but a number 7. That's my diatribe today. And it, frankly, JT, may be the most important thing we talk about in the entire episode because it matters
It
that
could
much to
it
me.
could be pretty close.
Yeah, it could be. All right, we'll move on. We are about 15 minutes into the episode here, and we've not talked anything football. But here we start. So when we go to fill out the episode afterwards and put timestamps, maybe we'll just put this: if you care only about football, skip to the 15-minute mark. Into the warm-up. Here we go. The warm-up today is not a single thought, but a handful of things I want to get out of the way and discuss just a little bit, things that were on my mind this week before we get into some Titans news, which there's a lot to talk about on that front. First of all, divisional round preview, okay? Or divisional round. We already had that. Conference championship round preview. We got conference championship games this weekend. It's championship weekend. 49ers and the Eagles, the Chiefs and the Bengals. Just one thought for each of these games from me. First of all, very excited for these games. I think we probably got the 4 best teams in the league right now, which is exciting. You don't always get that. There's an argument to be made for the Bills, but I think right now, obviously, they weren't peaking at the right time. They peaked way too early. So I think we got the 4 best teams, and they're all 4 really exciting teams. It should make for really, JT, the first round of these playoffs in which we don't have a total mismatch, don't have a blowout. These should be 2 really competitive games. I'm crossing my fingers at least that's how it looks because we've talked about this. It's been kind of an up and down playoffs so far.
Yeah, it certainly has. And I think at least for one of them, you can always count a Bengals Chiefs game to be entertaining.
Yep.
Any way you
Bingo.
try to cut it, it's been one of the most hot rivalries and budding rivalries in the NFL. That's not a divisional matchup. Those games are always going to be feisty. They're always going to play their hearts out on that game. The 49ers Eagles game also, I think it could look for maybe like a low scoring affair, but it's certainly not going to be boring at all because you have 2 of the best defenses in the league.
Right. Well, that's a good point. And it's interesting in really 2 different ways, these games, right? For the 49ers and the Eagles, there's some intrigue there because I think most people have looked at these 2 teams as the best 2 in the NFC for a little bit now, the back half of the season at least, but they haven't had a whole lot of opponents in common. They, of course, haven't played each other in a while. So, we don't know what this is going to look like. These teams aren't really familiar with each other. The Bengals and the Chiefs, these teams are very familiar with each other. This is going to be the 4th time in 2 years that we've seen this. We saw it in the regular season and then in the postseason last year. We saw it in the regular season this year, and we're about to see another championship game, a rematch between those 2 teams. And we know that in the 3 times they've met previously, they've all been exciting and close games. So for the 49ers and the Eagles game, all I have to say is this. I'm picking the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this year. I put 3 units betting on them. I've backed them. I think they're the team that's going to win it all. I hope it's 49ers Bengals. That's my hope for the Super Bowl game. My head says, honestly, my head is telling me maybe it's the nihilistic part of my brain, but it's saying this is going to be Niners Chiefs because it will be just too perfect from a narrative standpoint. It's what the league would want. It's not what I want. It's not what JT wants for sure, but that narrative of the Niners Chiefs rematch in the Super Bowl, let's see if they can get one over on the Chiefs and get their revenge, right? That could be a great narrative, and I'm afraid that's what's going to happen. I'd prefer Bengals Niners, but the reason that I think the Niners are going to win it all regardless is this. I was looking at the odds, thinking about these final 4 teams, trying to differentiate who I thought would be better against who. Matchups definitely make fights, and so there's an element of that to this, but I broke it down to the fundamentals, and there's really 2 schools of thought here. There's the school of thought, the old school classic, what wins in the playoffs, JT? What are the things that people say win in the playoffs? The 2 big things.
Defense, probably be one of them, and
right.
The other one is having a strong running game.
Bingo. Easy. And we didn't prep that. Just it's well known, right? Everybody knows the old school of thought in the playoffs is what?
I said I passed.
You
It was
passed.
like
You did.
I
Yes,
was
you
in
did pass
class
the
and
test.
I passed the test.
I'm always nervous to do that on a podcast because if you don't, then it's like, oh, that's awkward. Like it wasn't that easy. But clearly, it really is that obvious. That's been the school of thought forever and ever and ever. That in the end of the season, in the postseason, you got the cold weather. You got teams worn down, long year. It's been a slog, and teams are pretty beat up at this point. Having a good defense that is still strong and stout, and having a run game that can beat up on your opponent, that's really the key to success. The newer school of thought in the past couple of years has been, you got to have the quarterback, right? You got to have the quarterback. We've talked about this for a couple of weeks in a row now on this show. The idea that you have to have a top 5 quarterback, top 10 quarterback in the league to win it all. And I vehemently disagreed with that. I just think it makes it easier. It does not make it impossible if you don't have one of those quarterbacks. Well, obviously, Brock Purdy's not that guy. Whether you think he's a future starter in the league or you think he's succeeding because of the Shanahan system, whatever you think, nobody thinks that this is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. Okay? He's a guy, right? He's a guy. He's playing well enough for them to win. If they win the Super Bowl, it's going to bring up a lot of questions, I think, for folks that are diehard. You got to have the guy at quarterback or you can't win. And I'm hoping for that, openly rooting for that, openly putting my financial interest in that basket, right? But that's what I broke this down to. I said, okay, I still believe that in the end, winning a Super Bowl is it's not required to have these things, but it's just as important as having a great quarterback. It's who has the best defense, who has the best run game. And so maybe you take a hybrid of those philosophies, JT, and you say, okay, who's got the best quarterback, who's got the best run game, and who's got the best defense? Okay, well, quarterback, it's not the Niners, it's the Chiefs, but with the injury to Mahomes, it's either the Chiefs or the Bengals, depending on how healthy Mahomes is. With the defense, it's easily the Niners. They've been the best defense in the league for a little bit now. They are the best defense, I think, remaining. The Eagles are a very, very good defense. Don't get me wrong, but the Niners defense is ferocious. They're fantastic. And then the run game, again, it's either the Eagles or the Niners, and I give the edge to the Niners because of their, at the time, and still very questionable from a positional value standpoint, trade for Christian McCaffrey during the year, combined with Kyle Shanahan's fantastic and elite run scheme that he's always had. I give them the edge in the run game. They've just got too many guys, and not just in the run game, but in the run after catch game. I mean, this entire team's offensive production for a couple of weeks now has pretty much been predicated on, hey, we've got 17 dudes that are elite athletes, and they're just going to run all over the yard, and they're going to score touchdowns, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. That's what I think makes the Niners the favorite to win. I think that as long as Brock Purdy continues to play at an acceptable level, and frankly, his level of play last week was not good, and it encouraged me. It encouraged me because I've been saying the Niners are going to fall apart in the playoffs once Brock Purdy falls apart. And he didn't fall apart last week. You look at his stat line and it checks out. Like, he had a fine game, probably a below average game for an NFL playoff performance from a quarterback, but not the kind of game where you look at that stat line and you go, oh, I bet they lost and I bet this guy cost them the game. Okay. He didn't. They won and he was fine, but he had his worst game to date for sure, according to any metric, both plain stats or advanced metrics. They all agree he didn't play well. It's the worst we've seen him play as a starter in the league. They still won. It didn't matter. They not just won, they won, not super comfortably in terms of points, but if you watched that game, in my eyes, they were really in control the entire time, JT. And so I looked at that game and I said, if this is what a bad Brock Purdy game looks like for them in the playoffs, I think they're good. I think that Brock Purdy's probably going to play better this upcoming weekend than he did last weekend in the divisional round against the Cowboys. Even though they're on the road and they're in Philly and it's a hostile environment, I think he's going to play better. And as long as he doesn't play horribly, I think the fact that the Niners have the best defense and the best run game left in the playoffs is going to put them over the edge. And that's why I picked them to win it all. On the Bengals and the Chiefs side of things, the Mahomes ankle injury is the biggest question, right? Titans fans, we got to see this up close and personal this year twice, really, with Ryan Tannehill going down with the same issue, a high ankle sprain that sidelined him. Not the day of the game. He injured his ankle twice, came back to play in both of those games, finished the game, played relatively well given the fact that he only had one leg to stand on, but then missed at least 2 games after each of those performances. And so you look at Patrick Mahomes, who has a very similar injury, looked to be in just as much pain on the day of. You think this might be really rough for him. Now, it looks like he's in much better shape than Tannehill was based on the way that he's been walking around the facility and in the videos we've gotten from practice this week. So it looks like he's better, but he's in no shape to be the Mahomes that we know. Okay, his ankle's clearly still bothering him. His ability to navigate the pocket might be fine, but we don't know just how much he can use that plant leg, that back leg as the anchor that quarterbacks need to be able to launch the ball accurately and efficiently as they typically do. And we don't know, and this is a big one, just how much he's going to be able to move in terms of scrambling and running. It kind of looks like he's not going to be able to move at all in that way. Now, when they shoot him up the day of the game, maybe he won't feel anything and maybe he'll try it. We don't know. But I don't think he's going to be the Mahomes that we've grown to know and some love, most hate. I also think it's interesting that this is a random stat, but really just to tie into the Titans. Mahomes facing down one of two starting quarterbacks in the NFL this weekend that he has a losing record against. That would be Joe Burrow, who is 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes, the only quarterback who's unbeaten against him, only starting quarterback who's unbeaten against him. The only other starting quarterback in the league, JT, that has a winning record against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, it's Ryan Tannehill. He's 2-1. His one loss came in the AFC Championship game. And frankly, if he'd played in the Chiefs game this year in Arrowhead, I am totally confident, completely convinced that he'd be 3-1. And he would have the same number of wins against Mahomes that Burrow does. So one of the funniest stats out there, in my opinion. So ridiculous that Burrow and Tannehill are the only two that have gotten over on Mahomes. But that's where things are. And speaking of the AFC and quarterbacks, the last thing I want to get to before we move on to the Titans news segment is looking at the AFC quarterback landscape. Just thought about this week as we start to get news about quarterbacks that are already done for the year, moving and grooving. We got guys shaking up around the league. It's becoming very much like the NBA these days. We've got a lot of rumors about guys moving around. Where's Tom Brady going? Where's Derek Carr going? Where's Jimmy G going? Where's Aaron Rodgers going? Where's Lamar Jackson going? Like the list goes on and on, man. And we're already talking about it. And as we look at the landscape of where these guys may end up going, the AFC, we already thought it was quarterback hell. And I sent out basically this identical tweet last year of the list of the guys that are going to be playing quarterback in the AFC. And it was a monstrosity. It's just growing larger, right? So we've already got Mahomes and Burrow and Allen, Lawrence, Herbert, Russ, which, he sucked this year, but if he returns to Russ form, a plus guy. Deshaun Watson also sucked, also a guy that was elite and could reasonably be expected to become elite again. Then Lamar, is he sticking around? Aaron Rodgers, we'll talk about him more in the news segment, but sounds like he's going somewhere in the AFC because the Packers don't want him in the NFC. They've said that. Tom Brady, it's been reported he's leaving Tampa for sure. We don't know that for sure, but that's what we've heard. He told his teammates he was done in Tampa, and he's looking at teams like the Raiders, who are in the AFC, or potentially the Jets, who are in the AFC, or potentially the Dolphins, who are in the AFC, or even the Titans, a long shot in the AFC. Have we heard any rumors of teams he might go to in the NFC, JT, besides the 49ers? That's the only one. And even then, I don't
Yeah, I
think that's
can't really
very
think of
likely.
any other one that
Yeah,
he's been possibly linked to.
exactly. So maybe Rodgers, maybe Brady. And then in the draft, we got Young and Stroud and Levis. All three of those guys very likely to go. I would say at least I'd put money on 2 out of 3 of those guys ending up in the AFC. I think between the Colts and the Texans and the Raiders, who need a quarterback, and I'm blanking on the teams at the top there, but some of the very the two at the very top that definitely need a quarterback, the Colts and the Texans, both within the Titans' own division in the AFC. I'd be shocked if those two teams don't come away with a new quarterback. So like this list is nightmare fuel for that's 13 names right there. You could have 13 elite quarterbacks and 3 non-elite quarterbacks in the AFC. The NFC should be launched into the sun if it becomes this wasteland where Dak Prescott is the best quarterback in the conference. Matthew Stafford and his bum elbow. Is Kirk Cousins going to be the second best quarterback in the NFC? Is Kyler Murray going to come back and be the best guy in the conference? Like, it's a wasteland. It's a nightmare. It's so amazing how bad it's become. And really, it's been a result of the AFC arms race. The AFC has gotten these young guys just kind of by chance who have become the dudes, right? You've got the Mahomes and the Burrow and the Allens and like Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lawrence, Herbert. All five of those guys drafted in the past 3 or 4 years, or actually 3, 4, 5 years, Mahomes being the oldest. And they've all panned out to be seemingly elite quarterbacks. Really, really good quarterbacks. All in the AFC, all young, all on cheap deals, except for Mahomes and Allen. And some of them are starting to age out, but you get my point. That's kind of sparked this arms race in the AFC for quarterbacks that has grown just wildly out of control. It's wild. It's insane. And if the AFC ends up with even half of these guys that are questionable, in Rodgers and Brady, Lamar, Young, Stroud, Levis, it's gonna be impossible once again, and the AFC is gonna be stacked compared to the NFC once again. So that's all I have to talk about today. Again, kind of a weird episode, but we're gonna get into a lot of tidbits that are very important. So if you've been kind of not paying attention, now's the time to turn your ears back on. We're gonna talk about all things in the news area for the Titans this week, as well as some things around the NFL with producer JT here in just a moment. But first, if you are not subscribed to the show, wherever you get the good podcasts, not just your favorite podcast platform, but wherever you go when you're looking for the good ones, go to that podcast platform and subscribe. It's ridiculous that you're listening to this show, but you're not already subscribed. So please make sure that you are. And then once you're subscribed on the show feed, scroll all the way to the bottom, look for the 4 or 5 stars, click the last one, give us all the stars, give us a 5-star review, and then leave a 5-star rating and leave a review. Write whatever you want. We will read it out on the show. We're going to check for some more of those on Monday, so looking for those. And if you have an opinion on the show, things that you like or things that you hate that we do, we really want you to leave us a review. We're like, this is one of the only shows, JT, if you're listening to the NFL show on the Athletic feed, there's like 10,000 reviews, right? So if you leave a review with input, it's not going to mean anything. This is one of the only shows that you, our dear listeners, listen to on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, that you can directly impact the content that you're getting. If there are things that you love that we do or things that you hate that we do, please let us know. Please, we want your constructive criticism, and then we will read them on the show and we'll consider implementing them. It's important to us that we give you the best product that we possibly can, and we're here to service you guys. So whatever you want to hear, we want to provide for you. So let us know. Appreciate those in advance. Looking forward to reading a couple of those on Monday. All right, now let's get into our Titans news with producer JT.
Let's jump right into the news here, talking about the Titans, who signed defensive tackle Tyler Shelvin to a futures contract. Shelvin was a 2021 draft pick by the Cincinnati Bengals, so he was picked up off of their practice squad. He played in 7 games over the past 2 seasons and looks to be more of a depth piece for them, but something to keep an eye on for sure for the Titans.
That could be a future, like a tier tart insurance guy. He's somebody that I didn't pay attention to it at the time coming out. I wasn't really into the drafts and prospect side of things at the time, but according to Mike Herndon, who's a good friend of mine and a trusted colleague, he was pretty fond of Shelvin coming out, so it could be a guy that provides some added depth for the Titans on the defensive tackle front.
Yeah, moving on, let's talk about the New York Jets, who made a couple moves today.
Yes, they
One
did.
being someone who's very familiar with the Titans, and they hired Keith Carter to be their new offensive line coach and run game coordinator. So an interesting move there, moving right from the Titans offensive line position to the New York Jets position.
Yeah, he was a guy that I think got some treatment from fans in Nashville that he didn't deserve. I tweeted this out today. If you're a fan bashing Keith Carter now that he's gone, I think that this is an example of a very basic revisionist history and really just cope. Like you're coping with the fact that he's gone and you're mad at him because you blame him for the Titans offensive line this year. He had garbage to work with. Garbage. He had nothing to work with in this last year. I don't care who the offensive line coach is. Nobody is making the offensive line that the Titans had at their disposal this year look good. Okay, so that's off the table immediately. Secondly, Carter is a guy that almost every single year that he coached the offensive line in Tennessee, his offensive line ended the year much better than they started the year. And that's the sign of good coaching. Just very basic. Did your guys as a unit get better as the year went on? And most years that was the case. In 2019 and 2020, the offensive line, particularly the run blocking, was excellent under Keith Carter. Everyone seems to forget, this is a point brought up by my buddy Justin Mello, who I was talking to about this today. Everyone forgets that Derrick Henry ran for 2,000 yards the year after the Titans went to the AFC Championship. He had the rushing title the year that they went to the championship, and then became one of the only guys to ever go for 2,000 in the following year. He's an incredible running back for sure, but that requires a very good offensive line as well. He's a good coach, in my opinion. A good coach, not a great coach, but he's a good coach. He's a guy that Taylor Lewan talked about on Bussin' with the Boys a couple of weeks ago, in the sense that he was talking about how he rubbed guys the wrong way. His kind of hard-ass, brash style of coaching rubbed a lot of guys the wrong way, and he kind of wore the tires off of some of the veterans. That probably won't really be an issue in the Jets organization, because really they don't have a lot of veteran offensive linemen. It's kind of a younger group. So I think he's a great hire over there. He kind of gets a promotion. He's got more responsibility now that he's the offensive line coach and the running game coordinator. Or is it run game coordinator or running back coach? Which job?
Run game coordinator.
Okay, so yeah, run game coordinator up in New York. Clearly the NFL community of coaches see him in a positive light. I just don't think that it's fair to dump on him, and it's also unfair for sure to claim that he was always bad and always a guy that was looked down upon by Titans fans. That's not the case. People praised him for years, and now today some of those same people, and I've got a thread about it on Twitter if you're interested, some of those same people that praised him as little as a year ago are now claiming he was terrible, and it was always terrible. He's a good coach that has a coaching style that rubs guys the wrong way and probably ultimately did him in. And he had a horrible toolbox at his disposal in the year that he lost his job. It was just a bad combination of things that went wrong for a guy that I think is a good coach. So that bothered me today. And I think it's a little bit ridiculous that fans have been all over him when I think he's a good coach.
The Jets weren't done today, making probably one of the two biggest hires of the day in hiring Nathaniel Hackett.
The Jets are going fishing, baby.
Coordinator. Sorry.
Going fishing
coordinator,
with Nathaniel Hackett. Who could they possibly be fishing for, JT? Who could they possibly be fishing for with Nathaniel Hackett as their new OC?
Your guess is as good as mine, but they're gonna.
It's Aaron Rodgers. Of course, it's Aaron Rodgers.
I know. I was joking.
Okay. I was
joking because I was about to say, Denver. It's like they were going fishing, and it's like one of his buddies over in Denver said, "Oh, I didn't have any luck here," and then the Jets are gonna be like, "No, I'm gonna get this fish. I'm gonna get it, even though there's no luck."
I'll try a different area in the pond. Cast my reel. And listen, I actually think there's a decent chance, unlike with Denver last year, who hired Hackett purely as a trade bait. I don't know if he was trying to be traded, but bait for Aaron Rodgers nonetheless to come to Denver. Didn't work. He was a disaster, one of the worst coaches we've ever seen. Now he's the offensive coordinator for the Jets, who we'll see how that goes. But I think the idea there is very clearly and obviously to get Aaron Rodgers. I can't believe that a second team is using Hackett in a prominent role. By the way, he was not the OC in Green Bay when he left. No, he was like the quarterback's coach or a position. Like he was not the guy. Now he's been the guy, and now he's one of the direct assistants to the guy and handling the offensive production for the Jets. I don't know if you saw the Broncos offensive production this year, but not the greatest. Not the greatest. There was a meme going around for a couple of weeks. How many games would the Broncos have won if they had at least 18 points? The offense is so bad it can't get to 20 points on any week, so they lose. Like that's what you're getting with the Nate Hackett package. So enjoy New Jersey. Hope you guys enjoy him, and for your sake, I really hope that it works and you get Rodgers out of it, because otherwise it's a nightmare disaster hire. I also have to point out it's going to be a little too on the nose, JT, if Aaron Rodgers goes full Brett Favre, follows directly in his footsteps, every element of his career. He goes to the Jets as his first team out of Green Bay. Next, he's going to Minnesota, and then he's going to go down to Mississippi to defraud the taxpayers down there. Maybe is that the whole storyline arc for Aaron Rodgers? Because it's kind of shaping up to potentially look like that. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
It could be. That would be pretty funny if we're gonna get a Aaron Rodgers farewell tour.
Yeah.
Moving on to the AFC South here. What is absolutely going on with the Indianapolis Colts today?
Yeah.
Earlier today, there was a tweet from Jordan Schultz that said from his sources, Jim Irsay's number one choice for head coach remains Jeff Saturday. While others in the Colts front office prefer different leading candidates, Saturday is presented his staff choices during his second interview on Wednesday. Even though Irsay has not been in on these interviews, he is still continuing to get interviews for the Indianapolis Colts.
If the Colts conduct 10,000 interviews for their head coach position just to hire Jeff Saturday, I dare you anyone to look me in the face and tell me that God does not have a sense of humor, because that is hilarious. It will be so funny. I can't believe that he continues despite, and again, the Colts have, I mean, they're casting a wide net up there in Indianapolis, because holy crap, they have interviewed if you're a coach in the NFL at this point and you haven't been asked to interview for the Colts head coach job, you should take that as a personal slight, because everyone's been asked. Everyone has interviewed. And now in the second round, they've got 7 guys in the second round, 7, like SEVEN, 7 different guys in the second round of the coaching interviews, and Saturday is one of them. They had him first up, I believe. If they do all of this just to hire him, it's so hilarious, and it really brings into question for me the big, serious, joking aside question is how does Ballard continue, the GM up there? How does he continue to operate as their general manager after Irsay apparently overruled him on benching Matt Ryan, and then fired Frank Reich, and now potentially is choosing a head coach that he doesn't want, that he explicitly doesn't want? And then who knows, maybe he is meddling and forces Ballard's hand on the draft and makes him go get a guy at quarterback that Ballard doesn't want. Like, Chris Ballard's got it bad right now. He's already kind of on thin ice with crazy old Uncle Jim Irsay up there. Irsay's bad news, man. He's just bad news. He's bad news. I don't think Ballard's very good at his job, but I feel for him on this front. And here's the thing. With the news we're about to get here in a moment, hang on. I'll save this comment. You go ahead with the next.
Yeah,
topic.
I was going to say, finishing on that point, I think Irsay might just be trying to play his own little version of The Bachelor and just seeing who he gives the rose to. And it looks like Jeff Saturday is his number one true love and his first choice, even though other people in the building do not. But someone who used to be his choice, who has left for greener pastures, Frank Reich, was reported today to be hired as the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Reich, who was fired by Irsay mid-season last season for the Colts, used to actually play for the Panthers in the first ever inaugural season of the Carolina Panthers franchise. And actually, fun fact, threw the first ever touchdown pass in Carolina Panthers history. So kind of fitting that
that's crazy. Let's take we've got a picture here.
Head coach
this was his card. This was his card. This is Panther Frank Reich. Ladies and gentlemen, do not under any circumstances let Panther Frank Reich cook, because look at this man. Tell me this is not a winning head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Love it. Think it's hilarious. Found this on the internet today. Frank Reich. I've never been a believer in him as a head coach. I don't think it's a great hire, but the nightmare scenario for the Colts that I was going to mention just a second ago before I almost stepped on your breaking news here. I hope he's fantastic, first of all, in Carolina, because it'll be very funny. And the nightmare scenario for the Colts is that if crazy Uncle Jim gets his way and Indy conducts 5,892 interviews for head coach just to hire Jeff Saturday, and then Frank Reich immediately goes to the Panthers, trades up and steals a quarterback from the Colts, maybe the quarterback they wanted, gets one of those first 3 picks ahead of the Colts, gets a quarterback, and then Frank Reich and his new quarterback, rookie quarterback that he never got in Indianapolis, never got a stud rookie quarterback up there. If him and his new QB enjoy immediate success, I mean, every Colts fan they just have to throw themselves into the ocean. I don't know what you do at that point. You disavow the ponies. It's a nightmare scenario at that point. And I hope it happens. So that's exciting.
Moving on, we're going to go back to the Jets here. A lot of Jets in the news today for one reason or another. But it was reported that the sense is from the Jets that wide receiver Corey Davis could be sort of a cap casualty this offseason, which, as we talked about in the last episode on the news, we were talking about a couple wide receivers that the Titans could look into signing or maybe possibly trading for. Do you think that Corey Davis is on the top of that list of tight end or wide receivers the Titans should target?
Yeah, so I was looking at that today, JT. He's going to be 28 years old next year. And, he's going to be a free agent if they do cut him as a cap casualty. So there won't be any trading or contracts to pick up. But he's going to be 28, relatively old for a receiver. Not crazy old, but getting up there. He played in only 22 of his 34 games in New York with the Jets, which is not great over the past 2 seasons. Only 22 games of the 34 that they played, and he caught 66 passes for 1,028 yards in those 22 games. For reference, that's one more catch and 44 more yards than he had in his final season with the Titans in just 14 games. So with the Titans in 14 games, he essentially did the same as what he did in 22 games with the Jets. The difference there, obviously, is that he was in a high-powered offense with Arthur Smith and the Titans in his last season. He was playing with a good quarterback in Ryan Tannehill and not the literal worst quarterback in the league in Zach Wilson or a backup or Joe Flacco, former Super Bowl MVP and former elite quarterback. And the other difference is that he was getting to play behind A.J. Brown. He could be a clear wide receiver 2 archetype, which allowed him to not get the worst mismatches on corners, not get the most attention, not get the doubles, not get the safety attention, not get the secondary help. Like that's something that helped him tremendously. And frankly, it's the thing that Titans fans, as Davis walked out the door for that massive contract in New York, were saying, unless the Jets go and get a wide receiver 1, he's probably going to struggle, because we saw years without A.J. Brown of Corey Davis trying to be the wide receiver 1 that the Titans drafted him to be at number 5 overall in the draft, top 10 in the draft. He never panned out. He was never that guy. He had his best years at the end of his contract when A.J. Brown was helping take some of that heat off of him. So if the Titans make Treylon Burks into that guy, if he becomes that wide receiver 1 and Corey Davis is able to come back and be healthy, and his health and his age isn't an issue, I don't think it's a talent risk. I think he clearly still has it. And I don't think it's a fit risk either, because obviously he's familiar with the team. He worked well with the team for 5 years, knows Coach Vrabel, knows the guys, knows the playbook and the scheme. That's going to be fine, assuming the new offensive coordinator doesn't come in and change all of that. I don't think that he will. But that's the kind of thing where I could see it working, but it has to be the right price. And you're assuming an injury risk, which frankly the Titans have done a lot lately, and it's been to their detriment. So I think it's a guy that they'll consider. And ultimately, here's what I think about where he'll end up. If you look at this wide receiver free agent market, which we did the other day on the show, it's terrible. It's a desert, right? If the Titans are one of many teams looking for a free agent wide receiver, and Davis does get cut as a cap casualty, he's a guy that is probably going to be at the top of the list in terms of talent, in terms of attractiveness of those wide receivers. And I think he's going to probably be a risk to get overpaid by somebody desperate for him who's not as familiar with his game. And he might go somewhere else, and they may bid the Titans out of him in terms of the market that he has. So I think that it's probably unlikely he lands at the Titans for that reason. But for the right price, I think the Titans should entertain, if he does get cut, bringing him on.
Finally, rounding out this news segment, speaking of a Titans wide receiver, Kyle Phillips. It was reported earlier today by Jim Wyatt at TennesseeTitans.com just what his offseason will look like. In the article, Phillips said he was in the low 180s heading into the season weight-wise, but hopes to get up into the 190, 195 range this offseason. So good to see Kyle Phillips getting back at it and looking to next season.
Yeah, it is good, and I think still that he's going to be a very talented guy for this team if he can stay healthy. Adding a couple of pounds, building up, bulking up a little bit, definitely going to help in that regard. But there are some Tic-Tac Titan, Tyler Rowland on Twitter. I'm calling him out by name because I know he can take it. He claimed earlier in the season that essentially Phillips is a bust because his first year was injury riddled, and his injuries were a direct result of the fact that he's too small. First of all, ridiculous. Okay, there have been, I can name countless elite Pro Bowl, All-Pro, Hall of Fame receivers that had the same build as Phillips and weren't injury concerns. So your size is basic. Causation does not equal, or correlation does not equal causation, folks. Like, it's very simple logic. Just because something has sometimes to do with something doesn't mean that it always has to do with that thing. So yeah, does getting bigger, generally speaking, lower your risk of getting banged up in the season? Sure. Yeah, so like I think it's fair for him to put on some pounds and to bulk up a little bit just as a defense against that. But the idea that he for sure got hurt because of his size was ridiculous, is ridiculous, always will be ridiculous. And this is certainly not a victory lap on that front. There's nothing that he says in this article that he claims I got hurt because I was too small. He simply says he's going to put on some weight to try to combat it. But he also says verbatim, and I quote, "It's something that I ultimately really couldn't control. I can't really control when I get hurt," right? So then that's obviously true. So that's the situation with Kyle Phillips. Hope he bulks up. Hope he gets healthy. Hope he comes back next year and is a contributing member of the Titans. That's going to be it today for Titans news. And that leaves us just one article before we leave. It's the best article. Goodness. One segment. Can you tell it's Friday? Left before we leave, and it's the best bet gauntlet. Just so happens to be my favorite segment of the week, each and every week. We're going to continue to make money. JT, we've got graphics today of our success, so let's throw them up there. Here is what our season looked like during the competition, during the best bet gauntlet competition. I went through for all of my picks and all of JT's picks, just out of curiosity, charted to see which of us did best with which teams. And clearly, we did well, 90, 81, and 9 overall combined on the season. I went 46, 40, and 4. JT went 44, 41, and 5. The teams that I just aced, the Raiders, the Falcons, and the Motor City Kitties. All three of those teams I bet on and never lost. Went 2-0 with the Raiders, 4-0 with the Falcons, and 4-0 with Detroit. JT cleaned up on the Giants and Cincinnati. Crazy, I didn't even bet on Cincinnati once. Maybe it's because JT kept stealing them in our back and forth, but he bet on Cincinnati 8 times, went 6-2 with them, made almost 3.5 units on them. The Giants, he bet 5 times, went 4-1. And then Miami, the Jets, Philly, and Tennessee, he bet on 2 times each, went 2-0 with all three of those teams. So fantastic. On the flip side of things, pretty funny, JT went 0-4 with the Raiders. They were your nightmare team. Can't bet the Raiders next year. Clearly, you don't have a finger on the pulse of what McDaniels has cooking up over there. In your
I don't
defense,
think many people do.
I don't think anybody does. I think it's a great point. So don't bet the Raiders anymore. I've got to stay away from, and we identified this one midseason, JT. Jacksonville. I went 1-3. I got my one. I went against what I went 0-3 to start, and then said I'm never betting him again. I bet him, broke my own rule, won, and then said I'm out. I'm out while I'm ahead. So we got the one win. Went 1-3 with Buffalo as well. Brutal. Last thing I'll point out here. Every single team collectively, whether it was you or me on the show, we bet on all of them and got at least one win and one loss with all of them, JT, except for one. And who might that one team be? Well, it's none other than the lowly Indianapolis Colts. Those darn ponies had a combined 0-3 record on the show this year. We should have never bet them once. We should have never paid any mind to them. We should have never put our money in their hands and said, go win something for us, because they're losers. They're losers. They've been losers for a couple of years now, not betting the Colts next year. Not happening. I'm not doing it. I'm going to get a tattoo on my arm, full Christopher Nolan style. I'm going to just don't bet the Colts. I got to remember for next year. Also, went ahead and totaled up our entire year just to be on the record, because we're always claiming, JT, that we're making money, we're doing well, you got to bet with the show, blah, blah, blah. Here's the proof, guys. The proof's in the pudding. This is all of our bets this year to date, including playoffs. The regular season competition where each of us picked 5 picks apiece during the regular season each week. We also did our best bet gauntlet Thanksgiving special where we picked 18 different bets. And then we've been doing our playoff pick 6 where we're picking 6 bets each weekend of the playoffs. We have a combined record of 110, 92, and 9 on the season, which is 54%. Holy cow, 7.08 units gained. That is 1 percentage point away, JT, from making literal professional money. So we're killing it on the show. Couldn't be any happier with how our betting's been going, and we're going to keep it up. So let's get into our bets for this week. We've got the championship round, and of course, each round of the playoffs gets harder and harder to bet because we got less games to choose from, less players to choose from. We still have 6 that we like, 6 that we think are going to go 6-0. Almost went undefeated last week, went 6-1. Looking for another big one this week. And I'll start out with our first one, JT. It's basically the same bet we made last week on this same player. We're going with Justin Hurts. Justin. Good bet. Bet on Justin Hurts, to be fair, because he's not getting any rushing yards this year. Okay. But Jalen Hurts, his brother, he's going under 47.5 rushing yards on Sunday. And here's why. We bet it last week. And our rationale was they're playing the Giants and he's hurt. So they're going to blow him out. He's not going to need to run. And he's also not going to run because he's not wanting to get tackled because he's still not at 100%. He said before the game, and I quote, "I'm nowhere near 100%." So I don't think he's going to be at 100% this week unless he had a miraculous recovery. His shoulder's still going to be banged up. He's still not going to want to run nearly as much as he otherwise would. But more importantly, who are they playing? They are playing the 49ers. They are playing the best run team in the entire league. This 49ers team has allowed just over 70 yards rushing in total on average per game to their opponents. To opposing quarterbacks, they are allowing just 13 rush yards per game. Okay, I went through each and every game and pulled the stats. Here's the rushing totals of all the quarterbacks that the Niners have faced this year. Justin Fields in the first game, 11 rush attempts for 28 yards. Geno Smith, 2 for 2. Russ, 6 rushes for 17 yards. Matt Stafford, 2 for 6. Baker, 0 for 0. Mariota, 6 for 50, a season high in terms of what the 49ers allowed. Mahomes, 0 for 0. Stafford, 2 for -1. Herbert, 5 for 22. McCoy, 3 for 6. Dalton, 4 for 21. Tua, 0 for 0. Brady, 2 for 0. Geno Smith, 1 for 18. Taylor Heineke, 2 for -4. Jared Stidham, 7 for 34. David Blau, 2 for -2. And then in the playoffs, Geno Smith, 4 for 28. And then last week, Dak, 4 for 22. Again, average of 13 yards per game. The over-under for Hurts is at 47.5. I don't think they're going to be running the ball at all this weekend, really. I think it's going to be very sparse. And so because of his shoulder injury and because of the Niners run defense, this seems like an easy under once again, back-to-back weeks. Give me Jalen Hurts under 47.5 rush yards.
With my first pick in these pick six here, I'm going to go with the hottest one we have on the board. And I think everybody who listens right now is going to just want to roll their eyes and just say, no way, not at all. And I'm going to take Travis Kelce under 76.5 receiving yards, mostly because the Cincinnati Bengals have kind of been Kelce's kryptonite. In their last 2 meetings, which goes back to earlier this season and then in the AFC Championship last year, Kelce has had stat lines of 5 for 7 for 25 yards. And then earlier this year, it was 4 for 6 for 56 yards and no touchdowns. The Cincinnati Bengals are one of the best teams against tight ends just around the league this year. They've been great against all tight ends, but especially when it comes to this game, the Bengals know what to do. They know the game plan is to shut down Travis Kelce, and that's what they're going to try to do this week. So I'm going to take the under on his yards.
Yep, I love that one all the way. I think that, again, anybody that looked at the Jaguars game plan last week, which is seemingly was just, hey, let's just not guard Travis Kelce and let him go nuclear. The Bengals are probably going to look at that. Big Lou Anarumo up there, DC. Big guy, great defensive coordinator, probably the most underrated coordinator in the league. Big Lou's not looking at that and saying, yeah, let's just not guard Kelce. I think that that's an easy one. My next bet, I'm going Isaiah Pacheco. Back into the Chiefs game, Isaiah Pacheco over 11.5 rush attempts. Now, he's gone over in 5 of the last 7 that he's played. And with Patrick Mahomes' ankle uncertainty, I don't think you're going to see a lot of him scrambling. If they are going to get any yards on the ground, it's going to be via their running backs or potentially their wide receivers, I suppose. I think Pacheco continues to trend up. He's been fantastic in the playoffs for them. And I think 12 rushes for him are totally within the realm of possibility in this game. Weather could make it kind of gross, could influence the game plan in terms of, incentivizing teams to run a little bit more. So for those reasons, I'm going with Isaiah Pacheco. Give me the over 11.5 rush attempts.
With my second pick here in the 4th overall in the pick 6, I'm going to take Brock Purdy under 220.5 passing yards. Now, Brock Purdy has only gone over this twice in his 6 starts right now. So he's not really known to be slinging the ball all around the yard. He gets it done for this San Francisco team, and he's efficient with it. He doesn't have to throw for 300 yards to win these games. He just game manages, and the defense takes care of the rest. Well, why I'm so confident about this one this week is the fact that he's going to the link to play the Philadelphia Eagles. Only one quarterback this year has thrown for more than 220 yards this season in Philadelphia, and that is Kirk Cousins. Nobody else has been able to do it, and I don't expect Brock Purdy to be able to do it.
And Kirk only did it because they were getting murdered and they could only
in garbage time. Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
all garbage
expecting
time.
Brock Purdy to keep it under the 220, so I'm going to be taking that one.
Love it. Love it. With my third and final pick that I'm presenting, of course, these aren't a competition like the regular season. This is we've put our minds together, mind melded on these. We all back each of these bets, but the fifth pick we've got here, I've got Hayden Hurst back in the Bengals game. Oh, I'm just realizing. Sorry, two of my three are Bengals. Hayden Hurst over 3.5 receiving receptions, rather, not receiving yards. Definitely, if you can find over 3.5 receiving yards, take it, while you're also taking over 3.5 receptions. Really basic math here, right? 4 or more receptions for Hurst in 10 of his 15 games this year, 66.7%. Had 3 catches on 6 targets against the Chiefs in the regular season this year before he got hurt and had to leave the game a little early. So he was on pace to go over 4 pretty easily in that game. And then looking at the Chiefs side of the ball, their defense is allowing the 6th most schedule adjusted targets per game. So they are not great in terms of targets allowed to anybody, but especially tight ends. And I think that Hayden Hurst, who's been really good in this playoffs for the Bengals, been really good as a kind of a fill-in, plug-and-play guy this year for them after they lost a tight end in free agency last year. I think that he's going to have 4 receptions pretty easily in this game. Give me Hayden Hurst over 3.5 receptions.
Yeah, I really like that pick. You said how much they've been using him, just like he's basically, like you said, filled in for the role that CJ Uzama left. I mean,
Yep.
he really is Joe Burrow's security blanket in there, and I love that pick. With the final pick here in the pick 6, this one's a little bit of a head scratcher, not in the pick wise, but just what they're doing. And it's going to be Jerick McKinnon under 30.5 reception yards. They are setting this line a lot higher than I think it should be, in my opinion. We can
Okay.
look back to the last 2 games here that Jerick McKinnon has played. Last week versus Jacksonville, he had 0 targets and 0 receptions for 0 yards in the pass game. He had 11 attempts for 25 yards on the ground. And the game before that, when they played at Las Vegas, he only had 2 receptions on 3 targets, and he did not catch either of them. I think it's a little bit of a head scratcher, and kind of you're seeing this as the teams that they're facing have kind of figured out what they're trying to use in Jerick McKinnon, and they've kind of reverted him back to a little bit more of his running back role. And if he can't get that going, the receiving game is not going to come with it. If he can't be that dual threat for them, I don't think it's going to happen. I think this Cincinnati defense is very stout and is going to be able to lock him down as well. So I'm going to take the
Big
under
Lou
on those yards.
All right, I love it. So in review, before we get out of here, our 6 picks. Jalen Hurts, under 47.5 rush yards. And you should be writing this down, by the way. Isaiah Pacheco, over 11.5 rushing attempts. Travis Kelce, under 76.5 receiving yards. Jerick McKinnon, under 30.5 receiving yards. Hayden Hurst, over 3.5 receptions. Brock Purdy, under 220.5 passing yards. And that's going to do it for today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be back on Monday. Real quick before you leave, got to remind you, if you didn't listen again, yesterday on Thursday, we had an episode come out with James Foster, a full hour with him. We go through his entire mock draft 1.0 over at A to Z Film Room. He's fantastic. He gives us a great primer on the full first round, 31 of the very best players in this draft. So get to know him. It's great. We are excited to have him on board for the rest of the draft season. We'll be back on Monday. Hopefully shows next week, starting next week, every week until the draft. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Look for them in your inbox every single morning on those days. We'll be back with you on Monday, having a great time this weekend. Watch the championship games, eat some food, drink some beer, have a great time. Enjoy them. Hope they're good. Until then, for JT, I am Easton Freeze. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.